Welcome to Sleep Haven. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. Let your shoulders down, away from your ears. Let the day you have carried set itself down at the door, the way a traveler sets down a heavy pack and leaves it there and steps inside. We are on a hillside above the sea. It is a warm and ancient night, somewhere on the coast of Greece in no year in particular, in every year at once. There are olive trees around us, their leaves silver in the dark, turning a little when the wind remembers to move. Below us, down a long slope of grass and stone, the sea is breathing. You can hear it, that soft, unhurried sound, the water coming in and drawing back and coming in again, is the sound this whole night is built on. Let it be the sound your breathing leans against. There is a low fire here between us, burned down already to a warm and steady glow, more ember than flame. It does not need tending. It asks nothing of you. And I am the one who tells the stories, as they have been told on this coast for 3,000 years, aloud, at night, to people who are letting go of the day. Tonight, a man sails home. That is the whole of it, and it is enough. A tired king, a long way from the place he loved, turning his ship at last toward home, over a wide and patient sea. We will go with him slowly, the way the sea goes, and there is nowhere we have to be, and nothing you have to remember. If your mind drifts off the path, that is well. The path will still be home. The sea will still be home. Let us begin where all his troubles ended, which is to say, at the close of a long and distant war, far across the world, on a plain beneath the walls of the city. It happened as we used to in the old days, and it had been 10 years. Will not stay it. It was full of the things that make it. This is not a night for weeping. It's enough to say that it happened. Left alive, turned, each of them toward. Among them was a man named Odysseus. He was the king of a small green island in the west, an island called Ithaca, no larger than a good day's walk, with goats on its hills and a harbor like cupped hands. He was not the strongest of the kings who had gone to Troy, nor the tallest, nor the richest. He was the one who thought his way through things. When a knot could not be untied, he was the one who found the loose end. And now, with the war behind him, he wanted only one thing, the thing you want when you have been away too long, to go home, to see the smoke of his own hearth, to sleep in his own bed, under his own roof, with the sound of his own sea outside the window. He had a wife there, waiting. Her name was Penelope, and she was patient and clever as he was, in the quieter way that outlasts things. And he had a son, a boy named Telemachus, who had been a baby in a blanket when Odysseus sailed away, and who by now would be growing tall, a boy who had never truly seen his father's face. So Odysseus and his men pushed their dark ships down the sand and into the water, and they raised the sails, and they set out west across the wine-dark sea toward home. It should have been a short voyage, a few weeks of good wind. That was all it should have been. The sea, though, had its own ideas, and the sea is never in a hurry. What should have been a few weeks became 10 more years of wandering, 10 years of islands and strange shores and slow water, each one a little further from home before it let him a little closer. Tonight, we will drift through those years the way you drift toward sleep, without hurry, without fear, letting each shore rise up out of the dark and then sink softly behind us. None of it can reach you here. You are on the warm hillside, above the breathing sea. We are only watching the ships go by. The first wind carried them to a low and drowsy coast, a place where the air itself seemed half asleep. We are still on the hillside, you and I. The fire has settled a little lower, and the sea is still coming in below. But out on the water, Odysseus's ships have come to a shore where a gentle people lived, a people who ate the fruit of a plant called the lotus. It was a soft fruit and sweet, and it grew everywhere along that coast, golden in the long light. Odysseus sent a few of his men ashore to see who lived there, and the people they met were kind and offered them the lotus to eat, as you would offer bread to a guest. And the men ate it. And the strangest, softest thing happened to them. They forgot to come back. It was not that anything harmed them. It was that the fruit made them so contented, so warm and unworried, that the idea of home simply drifted out of their minds like a boat slipping its rope. Why sail on, they thought? Why work the hard oars over the cold water, when here the sun was warm and the fruit was sweet, and there was nothing at all that needed doing? They lay down in the golden grass, and they smiled, and they let the whole world go. Odysseus understood that this was a kind of sleep you do not wake from on your own, a forgetting so gentle it feels like arriving. And because he loved his men, and because he had not forgotten home, he went and gathered them gently, and led them back to the ships, and settled them among the benches, and they were not harmed, only very calm, and very far away behind their eyes. And the ships pushed off from the lotus shore and out again onto the open water, where the wind was clean and the horizon was wide. You may feel, listening, a little of that golden forgetting yourself. That is well. You do not have to sail on. You do not have to remember anything at all. The lotus shore is a good place to let a little of the day dissolve. We will carry you gently on. the way Odysseus carried his men, and you can stay just as soft as you like. The next island rose green and steep out of the sea, and on it lived a giant. Now I promised you a night without fear, and I will keep that promise. So let me tell you about the giant the way the sea tells it, from a long way off, softly. He was a herdsman, this giant, very large and very old, and he lived alone in a great cave up on the mountainside, with a flock of enormous sheep, woolly and slow, that he loved and cared for. He did not care for visitors. He liked his cave and his sheep and the quiet of his mountain, and he did not want the world coming up to bother him, which is a thing many of us understand. Odysseus and a few of his men, being curious, being tired, being hungry for the sight of a hearth, climbed up to the cave while the giant was out with his flock. And when the giant came home at evening and found them there, he was not pleased, the way you would not be pleased to come home tired and find strangers at your table. He rolled a great stone across the mouth of the cave to keep his sheep safe for the night, and the men were shut inside with him in the dark, with the sheep breathing and shifting all around. I will not tell you the frightening middle of it. There was danger in that cave, and there were losses, as there are in the old stories. And we will let them stay in the dark where they belong, softened by all the years between. What matters is the cleverness, because Odysseus was above all a clever man. He waited, he thought, and in the deep of the night, when the giant slept, Odysseus and his men slipped out among the great woolly sheep, moving with them, hidden in the warm crowd of them. And when the giant rolled the stone away at dawn to let his flock out to pasture, the men went out too, quiet as wool, quiet as breath, down the mountain and back to the ships. And they rowed away over the water, and the green island with its cave and its enormous gentle sheep grew smaller behind them, and smaller, until it was only a shape on the sea, and then not even that. Away by starlight. That is how they left. Away over the dark and forgiving water toward home. You are still here on the hillside. Nothing followed them off that island but the wind, and the wind is only the wind, moving in the olive leaves above you, turning them, letting them go some shores gave instead of taking, and the next one gave them a gift. They came to a floating island, a strange and pleasant place, ruled by a man whom the winds themselves obeyed. He was a keeper of weathers. And when Odysseus told him his story, the whole long tale of the war and the wandering and the wish for home, the keeper of winds took pity on him, the way kind strangers sometimes do, and gave him a parting gift. It was a bag, a great leather bag tied shut with a bright silver cord, and inside it, folded up small and quiet, were all the rough winds of the sea, every gale and gust and contrary breeze that might blow a ship off course, all of them caught and bound and put away. The keeper of winds had left out only one wind, the gentle west wind, the one that would carry Odysseus straight home. "Keep the bag closed," he said, "and the west wind will bring you to Ithaca." That was all. Keep it closed. So they sailed, and the good west wind filled the sails, and for 9 days and 9 nights it carried them steadily toward home. Odysseus stood at the steering oar the whole time, day and night, not trusting the great gift to any hand but his own, watching the water, watching the stars wheel over, keeping them true. And on the 10th day, they saw it. Ithaca, their own island, low and green on the horizon, close enough that they could see the small fires of people on the shore, the little bright points of hearths where families were cooking their evening meals. Home. So close that Odysseus, who had not slept in 9 days, felt the whole long tightness of the voyage begin at last to loosen. And with home in sight and his hand slack on the oar, he let his eyes close, and he slept. It was while he slept that his men, curious, wondering what treasure the keeper of winds had given their king in that heavy bag, untied the silver cord to see. And all the rough winds rushed out at once, in a great confusion, and blew the ships back the way they had come, back over all those 9 days of water, away from the little fires of home, out again onto the wide and open sea. It is a hard thing to be blown back from a door you had almost reached. But you, tonight, are not being blown anywhere. You are exactly where you should be, on the warm hillside. And home is not a thing you have to sail to. You are already inside it, already under the roof of this night, and the winds may do as they like out on the water. Let them. They cannot ruffle the fire. They cannot reach your rest. They came, worn and quiet now, to a wooded island, and on it, in a house of smooth stone in a clearing among the oaks, lived a woman who could turn the day into evening whenever she chose. Her name was Circe. She was a weaver of enchantments, and she lived alone with tame animals moving soft-footed through her halls. And she sang while she worked at a great loom, a low and endless song, and the smoke of her hearth rose straight and blue into the still air above the trees. She was the kind of power you meet in dreams, not cruel exactly, but not to be crossed, a keeper of a threshold between the waking world and somewhere older. Some of Odysseus's men went up to her house, drawn by the singing and the smell of the fire, and she welcomed them in and gave them warm food, and it made them so drowsy, so heavy and content, that they forgot themselves entirely and settled into her halls like animals settling into straw. When Odysseus came to bring them back, Circe met him at the door. And because he came gently and cleverly and without threat, she did not turn the evening against him. She let the day come back. She woke his men from their soft forgetting and set them all at her long table and gave them rest. And there they stayed a while, a good while, longer than they meant to. Circe's island was a place where time went soft at the edges. The war fell away from them there. They slept in real beds, under a real roof, and ate at a set table, and the terrible sea was only a sound far off through the trees. It was the first real rest they had had since Troy, and they took it the way you take a warm bath after a long, cold day, sinking into it, letting it hold them. When at last they remembered home and readied the ships again, Circe did a kind thing. She told Odysseus the way, the long, strange way that lay ahead, so that none of it would take him unprepared. And one of the things she told him was that before he could truly sail home, he would have to go to a quiet place at the very edge of the world and listen to the voices of those who had gone before. So they sailed to the edge of the world. We are drifting now, you and I, into the softest and strangest part of the voyage. And I will keep my voice low, because this is a hushed place we are going to, and there is nothing in it that can trouble you. At the far rim of the sea, where the water grows still and gray, and the sun does not quite reach, there is a shore where the tired dead go to rest. Not a frightening place, a quiet one, the quietest place in all the world. There is a low mist over the water, and the light is the color of very early morning, and everything there speaks in whispers, if it speaks at all, so as not to wake anyone. Odysseus went to that shore because Circe had told him he must. And there, in the gray and gentle mist, the ones who had gone on before him came softly up to the edge of the light to speak with him. They were only whispers now, only memories with voices, drifting like fog. His own mother was among them, and she spoke to him kindly, and told him that at home, on Ithaca, his wife still waited, and his son was growing tall, and the hearth still burned. It was a comfort to him, in that gray and quiet place, to hear that the little fires of home were still lit. And an old wise voice among the whispers told him the shape of the sea still to come, and told him, most of all, that home was still there, still possible, still waiting at the end of the long water, if only he kept his men calm and patient, and did not let them do anything foolish. And then the whispers drew back into the mist, gently, the way a tide draws back, and Odysseus turned his ship away from the edge of the world and back toward the living sea and the light and home. You may feel very far down now, very deep in the soft gray quiet. That is exactly right. That is where this part of the night is meant to take you. There is nothing here but mist and low, kind voices and the endless, patient breathing of the sea. Rest in it as long as you like. We are turning now, gently, back toward the shore of home. On the way back across the living water, they had to pass the singing rocks. Circe had warned him about this, and it is a gentle danger, the gentlest in all the story, because it is made only of beauty. On certain rocks in a certain stretch of sea, there were voices, voices so sweet, so lovely, so full of every song a sailor had ever half remembered, that any man who heard them wanted only to stop and stay and listen forever and never sail on at all. You understand this danger, I think. It is the danger of a thing so pleasant you do not want to move again. It is the feeling of a warm bed on a cold morning. It is the very feeling you may be having now, this heaviness, this not wanting to stir. And on the open sea, for a sailor with a long way still to go, even beauty can be a kind of net. So Odysseus, being clever, did a simple thing. He took soft beeswax, warmed it in his hands until it was gentle and pliable, and gave it to his men to press into their ears, so that they heard nothing but the muffled sound of their own oars and their own breathing, and they rowed on, calm and steady, past the singing rocks, and did not even know the voices were there. And the ship slipped by, and the sweet voices faded behind them into the wide sound of the sea, and were gone. And the men rowed on toward home, none the worse, only a little further along the water than before. Let the sweetness fade behind you too. You do not have to listen to anything now, not even to me. My voice can become just another part of the sea, coming in and drawing back, and you can let it blur and let it go. There is nothing you need to hear. There is only the water and the warm dark and the slow way home. There was a narrow place between two dangers, and they passed it in the dark. I will move us through this quickly and gently, because it is only a passage, only a strait of water to get through, and getting through it is the whole of it. On one side of a narrow channel there was a danger, and on the other side there was another, and a ship had to thread the middle between them in the deep water and keep its nerve, and not look too long to either side and simply go through. That is what they did. Odysseus kept them calm. He kept them rowing. He kept their eyes ahead, on the open water beyond the strait, and he took them through the narrow place steadily in the gray light before dawn, and did not let them panic, and did not let them stop. And then the channel widened, and the two dangers fell away behind them on either side, and the sea opened up ahead, broad and forgiving and free, and they were through. They did not look back. There was no reason to. The narrow water was behind them now, and it could not be behind them any more completely than it was. Some passages in a life are only that, a narrow place to get through, in the dark, without looking too long to either side. And then the water widens again. It always widens again. You are through the narrow places of your own day now. They are behind you. The water has opened up, broad and dark and gentle, and there is nothing ahead but the long, soft sail toward rest. They came, hungry and tired, to a green island where the sun kept its cattle, and there they had to learn to wait. It was a beautiful place, this island, with wide meadows and slow golden cattle grazing in the long grass. And it belonged to the sun himself. And the one rule of it, the only rule, was that the cattle were not to be touched. Odysseus knew this. The old wise voice at the edge of the world had told him, "Leave the cattle be, and all will be well. Keep your men patient, and you will come home." But the wind turned against them and would not let them leave, and day after day they were kept on that island, waiting for a fair wind, and their food ran low, and waiting is hard, harder sometimes than sailing. Odysseus did all he could to keep his men calm and patient, and for a long while they were. They fished. They gathered what they could. They watched the golden cattle in the meadows and left them be, and waited for the wind. I will tell you softly that in the end the waiting wore them down, and while Odysseus slept, some of the men could bear the hunger no longer, and they did the one thing they had been told not to do. And so when the wind at last came fair, and they sailed away, the island of the sun did not let them go entirely unmarked, and there were losses on the open sea beyond it, the last of them, the sea taking back what the war had left. We will not linger there. We will let the gray water close over it, gently, the way the sea closes over everything in the end, and smooths it, and forgets. But Odysseus lived. Odysseus, who had touched nothing, who had kept the rule, was carried by the sea alone now, on a broken piece of his own ship, over the wide water, drifting, small under the enormous sky, still turned, even now, even with everything lost, toward home. Rest with him a while drifting. The sea is holding him. The sea is holding you too. And drifting, alone, half asleep on the moving water, he came at last to the softest island of them all. And there time slowed until it almost stopped. This is the most restful chapter of the whole long voyage, and I will tell it slowly, because there is no hurry left in it at all. The island was small and green and far from everything, ringed with quiet coves and soft with meadows of violet and wild parsley. And on it lived a gentle spirit of the sea named Calypso, who found Odysseus washed up on her shore, exhausted, and took him in and cared for him. And there he stayed, not for a day or a season, but for years, 7 of them. 7 slow and quiet years on that soft green island at the far edge of the world. It was a kind of long, warm rest. Calypso's island was a place where nothing ever needed to be done. The days were mild and blurred one into the next, like the days of a long recovery, like the days of a childhood summer, like the soft gray days when you are half asleep and half awake and cannot tell, and do not care to tell which is which. There were caves hung with sweet vines. There were springs of clear water. There was the sound of the sea, always, that same soft sound, coming in and drawing back, that has been under this whole night, and is under it still. He was safe there. He was cared for. He wanted for nothing at all. And still, even in all that softness, even in all that quiet, some small ember in him stayed turned toward home. He would sit sometimes at the edge of the sea and look out over the water, west, toward Ithaca, toward the little island and the harbor, like cupped hands, and the wife and the son and the hearth. And he would let himself remember them, gently, the way you remember a good dream in the morning. And then he would let the memory go soft again and rest. 7 years. Let that length of quiet settle over you. 7 years of mild days and soft nights, and the sea always breathing. A rest so long and so complete that the war and the wandering and the narrow places, all of it, drifted very far away until it was only a story, only something the sea murmured about, far off to itself. You have all the time in the world tonight. There is nowhere you have to be. You can stay as long as you like on the soft green island in the 7 quiet years, and let everything you have carried grow light and lighter and float away. At the very end of those years, the gentle spirit of the sea, who was kind, saw that his heart was still turned toward home, and she did not hold him. She helped him build a small raft of good timber, and gave him bread and water and sweet wine for the voyage, and sent a fair wind after him, and let him go west, over the water, toward Ithaca, at last. The sea was rough for a while after the soft island, and tossed his little raft, and wore him down again. But he held on because he always held on, and at last it carried him, spent and sleeping, to one more shore. And this shore was the kindest of them all. It was the island of a gentle, peaceful people who loved the sea and were loved by it, a people of gardens and orchards and easy harbors, who had never known war and did not expect harm from anyone. A princess of that land found Odysseus where the sea had left him, worn and weary at the edge of the water, and she was not afraid of him, and she brought him up to her father's house, where he was bathed and clothed and fed and given a soft place by the fire, and asked for nothing, not even his name until he was rested. And when he was rested, and warm and safe among kind strangers, he told them at last who he was, and where he was from, and the whole long story of the war and the wandering, this very story, told softly by a fire, much as I am telling it to you now. And they listened, the way you might be listening, drifting, letting the words wash over them. And when the story was done, they did a wonderful thing. They gave him a ship, a fast, fine ship, with a good crew, and they filled it with gifts, and they promised to carry him home themselves, all the way, over the last of the water, to Ithaca. He need not even row. He need not even steer. He had only to lie down on the deck among soft blankets and rest, while their strong crew took the oars and the good ship flew west over the calm night sea toward home. And so on that last voyage, the voyage home, after 20 years away, Odysseus lay down on the deck of the kind stranger's ship, under the wheeling stars, with the sail full above him and the water rushing soft along the hull, and the long, patient sea rocking him, and, at last, with home only a night away, he closed his eyes, and he fell into the deepest and sweetest sleep of his whole long life. He woke on the shore of home, and for a moment did not know it. The kind strangers had done exactly as they promised. While he slept, their swift ship had crossed the last of the sea and come softly into a hidden cove on Ithaca, a quiet harbor ringed with olive trees, and they had lifted him, sleeping, so gently that he did not stir, and laid him on the sand of his own island, with all his gifts around him, and slipped away again over the water before the dawn, leaving him there, home, asleep on the shore of home. And when he woke, in the gray and pearl light of very early morning, with the mist still on the water and the first birds just beginning, he looked around him at the cliff and the olive trees and the hills beyond, and, after 20 years, after so much sea, he did not at first believe it. It seemed too soft to be true. But then the light grew, and the mist began to lift, and he saw the shape of a particular hill he had known as a pool, and a particular bend of the shore. And he knew all at once and with his whole tired heart that he was home, that the long sea was behind him, that his feet were on the ground of Ithaca at last. He knelt and touched the earth of his own island. He was quiet for a long time. There is no hurry in a homecoming. It is a thing to be taken slowly, the way you are taking this night slowly. The sun came up soft and gold over his own hills and warmed the sand, and the sea that had carried him for 20 years lay behind him now, calm and bright, and finally, done with him. But home is not only a place. Home is the people who kept the light on, and they were still there, all of them, waiting. At the top of the island, in the old house with its worn stone steps, his wife Penelope had waited for him for 20 years. She had never given up the hope that he would come, not entirely, not in the deep, quiet place where hope really lives. All through the long years, she had kept the household and raised their son and kept the door. And every evening she had climbed to a high room and looked out west over the water, the way he had looked east from Calypso's island, the two of them gazing toward each other across all that sea without knowing it, for years and years. And every night she had let herself hope, gently, and then let the hope go soft, and slept, and hoped again in the morning. Their son, Telemachus, the baby in the blanket, was a young man now, tall and steady, with something of his father's thoughtfulness in his face. And there was an old dog, too. An old dog named Argos, who had been a puppy in Odysseus's hands the very week he sailed away to the war, and who had waited in his way all these years, lying in the sun by the gate, growing gray, growing slow, keeping one ear always half turned toward the harbor road. And when at last Odysseus came up that road, after 20 years, changed and weathered and dressed as a stranger, so that no human eye knew him at first, the old dog Argos knew him at once, knew the step and the scent of him, lifted his gray head, and thumbed his tail softly against the warm ground. Once, twice in the pure and simple joy of a faithful thing whose long wait is finally over. His master had come home, and the old dog was at peace. And Penelope, careful and clever to the last, made sure it was truly him, in a quiet way that only the two of them could have shared, a secret about their own bed, built long ago from a living olive tree still rooted in the ground, a thing only her true husband could know. And when he answered it, when he showed he knew the deep and rooted secret of their own home, she knew him. 20 years fell away in a moment, and the two clever, patient, faithful people, who had each kept a small ember burning across an ocean of time, sat together at last by their own hearth, in their own house on their own island, and were home. And so the long voyage ended, the way all long voyages end, quietly at home, by a fire that does not need tending. There is nothing more to sail to now. Odysseus is home. The ships are drawn up on the sand. The sea, which carried him for 20 years, is only a soft sound outside the window now, coming in and drawing back, and coming in again. The same sound it has always been, the same sound that has been under this whole night, and is under it still, and will go on breathing long after you have drifted off to sleep. You have come all the long way with him, and now you can set it all down, every island, every wind, every narrow place. You do not have to carry any of it. It has all reached its harbor. The war is over and forgiven. The wandering is done. The faithful ones are together by the fire. And you, here, on the warm hillside above the breathing sea, are just as safely home as he is. You have been home all along. This night has been your Ithaca. The fire is very low now. The olive leaves are still. The sea goes on, soft and patient and endless, coming in and drawing back. Let your breath go with it. In like the tide. Out like the tide. There is nothing left to do. Nowhere left to sail, no one left to wait for. Everyone is home. Everything is quiet. The stars are turning slowly overhead, the way they turned over his ship on the last kind voyage, and they will keep turning gently all night, whether you watch them or not. So let them turn without you. Let the sea breathe without you. Let the fire burn down to nothing on its own. Odysseus is home and can rest at last. And so can you.